In the trial of Helen Lord, the schoolteacher accused of causing grievous bodily harm to Constable William Forbush, an expert medical witness has testified that she may have been in a state of automatism at the time of the attack. Charles Lotterby, prosecuting counsel, has contested this evidence strongly. The headmaster of Miss Lord's former school at Suffolk has described an incident in which Miss Lord was involved in abducting an 8-year-old boy. And as a result of his statements, counsel for the defence, Mr. Barry Dealey, has at last forced the introduction in evidence of a confidential letter, allegedly written by Detective Superintendent Brotherton and apparently containing personal details about Miss Lord.
Of course, you're still under oath, Superintendent.
I don't need to be reminded of that.
No. No. I have here a letter bearing your signature written to Mrs. Eunice Bentley on May the 13th. The text is as follows. Dear Madam, the following details are sent to you for your information. On June 21st of last year, whilst employed as a teacher at Deben End School, Suffolk, Miss Helen Lord was questioned by police officers concerning the disappearance of an 8-year-old boy who had been missing from the time he left her class at school in the afternoon until she brought him to his parents' home at 10:30 that same evening. Miss Lord claimed to have found the child wandering about, but did not entirely satisfy her interrogators that she was telling the truth in the matter. An independent witness was in fact prepared to testify that Miss Lord had taken the little boy home with her after school. It is to be appreciated that the police are only asked to submit details of convictions recorded against members of the teaching profession, and that in Miss Lord's case the evidence was not thought sufficient to proceed to criminal charges. Nonetheless, because of the gravity of the matters involved, it is thought that you would welcome this information, which you will regard as highly confidential. Yours faithfully, J.G. Brotherton, Detective Superintendent for Chief Constable. Now, Superintendent, did you in fact sign a letter such as this?
I did, sir.
Will you look at this document and identify it?
That is the letter I signed.
Thank you, Superintendent. The letter should be marked Exhibit 2.
Is this a fairly usual sort of letter for the Chief Constable's office to write, Superintendent?
Well, sir, in the normal...
Now, one moment, Mr. Dealey. You may ask questions of fact about this, but nothing else. I must make it quite clear that the police are not on trial here.
Indeed, Your Honour, I am well aware they are not. It's simply that I owe it to my client to discover the motive behind the writing of such a letter.
Motive? I don't quite understand you.
Well, the author himself is at some pains to point out that the police are only asked to submit details of convictions recorded against members of the teaching profession. He even goes on to make clear what I myself have stressed earlier in this case, that Miss Lord has never been convicted. What then is the justification for the writing of such a letter?
Yes, Superintendent, you may speak as to that.
Well, the details were sent on to us from Suffolk. That's in the ordinary way of things. We have to study the material, you know, form a judgment. In Miss Lord's case, it seemed to us that really she'd been a bit lucky.
I beg your pardon, Superintendent.
I said it seemed to us that she'd been a bit lucky. I mean, there was pretty powerful evidence against her, actually. If the Suffolk police hadn't been afraid but had gone ahead and pressed charges, it seemed to us they would have had a case.
So, you act as judge and jury?
Your Honour, the court should understand that the business of the police is the prevention of crime, just as much as the apprehension of the criminal. The general public seem to imagine us standing around waiting for a crime to happen, then chasing off after the criminal like a pack of bloodhounds. Well, that's not the way it is. That's a travesty of the truth. Half the time, Your Honour, we know, but we can't do anything about it. We're hamstrung. We can't act.
The court understands your concerns, Superintendent, just as it commends your sense of responsibility. However, you were out of order to use this courtroom as a platform for the expression of your grievances. You're concerned with facts, not opinions here.
I apologise, Your Honour. I spoke out of turn.
Mr. Dealey?
Nothing further, Your Honour.
Thank you, Superintendent. You may stand down.
Miss Lord, Your Honour, I beg your pardon. For my next witness, I should like to call the defendant herself, Miss Helen Lord.
Helen Lord.